Welcome to this week's 200th episode of Inside the Headset. We like to start this milestone podcast by thanking the numerous coaches from all levels that have participated in our show over the past few years. In addition, we'd also like to thank all the listeners of the podcast who tune in and support Inside the Headset. We look forward to bringing more episodes with more coaches in the future podcasts. Thank you again for supporting the AFCA and Inside the Headset. Now let's get into our 200th episode.
This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Tiffin University Head Coach Cris Reisert. Coach Reisert shares the importance of learning the opposite side of the ball, discusses his personal transition from player to coach, and goes into detail throughout his journey to becoming a head coach. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Reisert.
Coach, what's going on, man? Happy to have you.
Mario, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to talking some ball with you.
No doubt, man. Well, talking ball is probably something you're pretty good at. Been having that strong quarterback background. Just doing a little homework on you, man. You're a 4-year starter at Ohio Dominican. Is it Dominican or Dominion?
Ohio Dominican, yes, sir.
Ohio Dominican, and setting all kinds of NAIA records, and even been a 2007 Player of the Year. So when I started doing my homework on you, I was like, okay, we're off to a really good start here. And then the curveball immediately came. Okay, let's get into the coaching stuff. And your first gig, you go to the dark side of the ball. So your first opportunity to experience coaching, ironically, there at Ohio Dominican, was actually on the defense side of the ball, defensive graduate assistant position. What was that about? Was that purposeful? Was it just the opening? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I definitely think it was purposeful. The coach that I played for, Dale Carlson, I had approached him after I was done and said, Coach, I really think I want to give this coaching thing a try. And it's a passion of mine. I want to be able to help young people, find their way and find a way to maximize themselves. And I love football. And so it was kind of a perfect fit. And he said, Chris, of course, I'm going to hire you, but you have to coach defense. He said, that's the only caveat I'm going to give you, and you have to go interview with the defense coordinator. So I went over and interviewed with the defense coordinator. Of course, he had coached me for 4 years too, so he knew me. So it was a little bit of a step. And he said, of course, you're in. And it was such a great experience for me. As a quarterback, of what's happening on the other side of the ball, but you don't quite understand the technique. You don't quite understand all the teaching habits of it. You don't quite understand the why behind what's going on. And for me, it was great to be able to really kind of get into the mind of the safeties and the corners and what they were seeing, what they were being taught, how they were processing certain coverage or certain route schemes and certain releases and things of that sort. And it was a huge learning experience. And then I think from my vantage point, being a former quarterback, I was able to really kind of tap into those guys of, hey, this is what he's thinking about on this particular play. And when he sees that between the corner and the safety, that's what's going to trigger in his head that he might go there with the football. So I think it was a way for us to really kind of share ideas with each other. And for me, it was invaluable.
Absolutely, man. What an awesome opportunity to just flip that early on in your career. Because I think in this game, the longer you kind of end up at a position, the harder it is to maybe transition, especially side of the ball. The longer you kind of stick on that offensive side of the ball, the harder it is. So just early in your career, being able to sneak that experience in, learn hopefully a heck of a lot. Sounds like it was, and be able to provide the staff something, especially at such a young age. Now, I did want to ask you this, man. We're a lot of podcasts in, so we've had a lot of coaches hop on. Everybody's journey's different, but one thing that does happen from time to time is you get some of these guys that go and have some really, really good playing careers. I guess that's not even important. They go and have a career at a certain school and they get a GA position directly after that. And you go from hanging out with the boys, I'm sure you got some crazy stories that been a 4-year starter there. To all of a sudden, you're a coach, and you have to either come in prepared to be able to relinquish that role of being buddy student with the student athletes, or you're going to learn very, very quickly, or you won't make it. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is unique, and one of the things that I really believe helped me was I had some success as a player, and so being able to walk into a room and I think have the respect of the guys already I think that really allowed me to kind of get into that player-coach relationship where, they were going to value the feedback because I had some respect because I had done it at a high level. And so that was, I think, really helpful. The relationship though, my second year, I was coaching one of my best friends. I was my second year. So first year I was coaching DBs. Second year, they moved me back to offense, coach quarterback. So I was coaching one of my best friends, and so having to really kind of distance ourselves and be professional. And he was better than anybody at it, but to make sure that it was player coach and not buddy. And that was hard. We had to make some hard decisions. We ended up kind of moving on with a different quarterback in the middle of that year.
Right.
That was a tough decision, and a tough conversation with best friends to tell them, hey, we're going to go in a different direction and here's why. And to his credit, we're still great friends to this day. He always owned it and made it easy for me. But those conversations, I think, really shape me today, where I'm a big believer in hard conversations have to happen. Yeah. And I think they do allow for growth as a coach. And I think they allow for growth with the players in those conversations that are having them with. And so that was a really unique time in my career, but a really powerful time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's ironic you're a young head football coach at Tiffin University at the moment, but I think when you have exposure to some of these situations early in your career, it does make it easy because you just go back and rewind and think about when you were hungry to become a coach. And I'm thinking about that with myself. I can't wait to get my own room. I can't wait to hop on the road and recruit. I can't wait to do the X's and O's. I never said I can't wait to go and have a tough conversation with my 2-year starter. He's on the bench, and I mean, in my last year of coaching, after 10, 11 years, you had to make those tough decisions. Those conversations are just never fun. I couldn't imagine with somebody with that close relationship and, at that point in time, like you said, that early in your career. Now, one of the things that I thought was really cool about you is it would only make sense for you to go and have this tremendous playing career at QB, go be the QB GA, all of a sudden be the QB full-time coach, fall into offensive coordinator, turn into a head coach. That seems like what the story should be, but it's nothing like that. Shortly after your GA and opportunity to get back on the offensive side of the ball, you end up at Ball State as an assistant O-line coach. Now, I know it's still on the offensive side of the ball. You got some background there. I know the quarterback is in tune kind of with what everybody's doing on offense. Sure. Probably at a pretty high level, but at the same time, going in there, sitting in a room with 5 big hogs and just soaking up that game from a much different perspective. What did that do for you in terms of your development? What kind of stuff did you learn that you thought you knew but didn't quite?
Yeah, a lot. I realized I didn't know much at all.
Yeah,
for sure. And no, I mean the reality behind it was I was a full-time coach at Dominican. I was coaching wide receivers at the time and the recruiting coordinator, and it was in a really great place with great people and still learning a bunch of ball. But I always knew that I wanted to be an offensive coordinator. Ultimately, I hoped at one point I'd be able to be a head coach. And I wanted to be an offensive coordinator that when a problem arose, I wasn't one of those guys that looked at somebody else and said, hey, that's an issue, fix it. I wanted to be a guy that, hey, there's an issue there. Let's work together and fix it. And so I really felt like in order for me to be a problem solver, in order for me to be as good as I wanted to be as an offensive coordinator, I had to learn what was happening up front and not just have an understanding. I had to have a technical feeling and an ability to teach what's happening up front. And so I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to work at Ball State, work for Coach Pete Limbo, Coach Rich Cross, who was the offensive coordinator, and had a chance to work with Nick Tabak, who is now at Wake Forest, was a line coach. And that was probably one of the better experiences in my coaching career in terms of where I could really learn and grow and kind of find, that voice of that part of the game. And it was huge, as a quarterback. You kind of know those 5 guys up front, they're going to block that guy, and you don't really care how they're going to block them or why they're going to block them. You just know they're going to block those people. Right. To be able to get a greater understanding of the pace and the tempo and the technique and the communication, it was invaluable. And to this day, it's probably one of the more impactful positions I've held because I worked for great people. I learned a ton of football and behind-the-scenes stuff, and it really just helped me get uncomfortable too, which I think in terms of being able to grow and be the coach we all want to be, I think at times in our career, there has to be an uncomfortability so you can get outside of your comfort zone. And that was one of those points in my life where I had that experience.
Yeah. Well, at this point in time, you're about 5-6 years into coaching. You've been on the defensive side of the ball. You've coached receivers, as you mentioned. You've dabbled in the recruiting coordinator role. You've been at the offensive line. So shortly after this, you take the Elon position. And now you're the tight ends coach, which I know a lot of people deem as that hybrid wide receiver offensive line. A great place to go and learn offense, as a lot of people say, if you're not a QB guy. What are some of the uniquenesses of now? Like I said, you're bouncing around these different positions. What were some of the unique things from tight end that you were able to gather to help you be as productive as an OC, which we'll talk about here in a second?
Yeah. I think to your point, Mario, I think it is kind of a hybrid spot, and I think from a coaching perspective, for me, still young in my career, to be able to get attached to the offensive line still, and then also to not just be attached to the run game, but then with the tight end, you're coaching the concepts and you're involved in the pass game too. And so, from a learning perspective for a coach, it was great because you had to be in tune with everything that was happening offensively, much like a quarterback. To be honest, I coached quarterbacks similar to the way I coached our tight ends. It really wasn't much difference, And the one thing that I'll say that I think is unique about the position, to your point, is you have to do all the stuff that an offensive tackle does. You have to do all the stuff that a wide receiver does, and half the amount of time, right? You got half your amount of time that's devoted to being a run game blocker, and then half of it in the pass game, and then take a third of that half time and throw it on special teams. And so I have such respect for the guys that play that position, because you have to do so much more with less. And the one thing I do think that helped me in coaching was I realized that, hey, I'm going to have 15 minutes to drill these guys, right, as opposed to 25 or 30 minutes. And so we had to make sure that we were getting 3 or 4 applications within each drill, right? So we were compounding lessons that needed to happen that maybe could have taken 45 minutes, and we were shrinking them into 15. And so it made you creative with how to do more with less.
Man, I absolutely love that you say that. I was literally this morning, I was just flipping through. I had a former player of mine who just got into high school coaching and was asking for my my wide receiver stuff. And I had written a drill philosophy that was basically not necessarily about a specific position, but it was about, these are the thoughts that you should have whenever you're putting your drill list together, whenever you're going out to practice. These are philosophies. And then, it has these little tidbits of information that apply to all positions. But one of the things it talked about was being efficient with your time. If you have a way to combine drills that allow for them to work multiple skill sets at once, I mean, that's it's the ultimate way to do things in order to be productive. And what a position to have, so many different moving parts with blocking, catching, hand placement, both to catch the football and the block. It's just all these different things. And what a tremendous place to have that mindset and say that. So that's just great that you say that, because I don't think a lot of people put that type of thought into into their drills and how they can be the most efficient with their time, regardless of the position, but especially at a position like tight end where there's so many skills involved, and those guys are going to be on the front line of your kickoff and kickoff return.
They do. They got it all, man. They're the ultimate, utility player, right? Where they kind of got to provide so much value in so many different ways.
Yeah, and honestly, too, the tight end coach is kind of, although you see probably a little bit shift more to the running back coach / special team coordinators, but for a long while it was the tight end coach / special teams coordinator. Like what a big plate of responsibilities. Now, so you went and gathered all this experience, and you get a call or you go and seek. I'm curious to have this opportunity to come back to your alma mater as the offensive coordinator. First, just real quick, how did that come about?
Yeah, so it was crazy. We had some turnover at Elon, and so our head coach had left, and I was fortunate enough to be kept on by the new regime. Coach Kurt Signetti had come in, and it was an amazing experience to be able to work with him and that staff. And really, I was on vacation. It was late. It was July, and Kelly Cummings, the head coach at Dominican, he and I had worked together when I was a GA. Prior to leaving to go to Ball State, actually. And so we had worked for, about 6 months together. And that position had turned over. The guy that was in that position had gotten a head job. And he had called and said, hey, I was playing Monopoly on vacation, and he called me. He kept calling me. I'm like, why is he calling me? So he called me 5 or 6 times, and I'm like, all right, let me take it. So finally I called him, and he's like, hey, I got this job open. Are you ready? Do you want it? And so here, my wife and I were on vacation. It's July. Calling Coach Signetti, that's been so good to me to allow me to stay on, and I know great things are going to happen there at Elon and with him. And but it was one of those things, and we had just bought a house in Elon, and so it was one of those things where my wife and I, as we really kind of reflected and prayed about it, it was an opportunity to get more responsibility, and I knew ultimately I wanted to be a coordinator. I wanted to see if all this stuff I had learned, right, when put to the test, if I actually was going to be able to kind of allow me to go and have some success there. And then, I always think when you make decisions, you kind of think a few years in advance. I wanted to be a head football coach, and I knew that my opportunity to be a head football coach would be greater if we could go and coordinate and have a lot of success than if I had a chance to stay as a tight ends coach at Elon. So it was one of those decisions, albeit a hard one. I'm grateful to my wife. We had just bought a house, and we lived in it for 4 months, and then had sold it, but ultimately, it ended up being one of the best moves you could have made.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, you kind of made mention right there about how you like to look a couple years ahead, knowing you want to be a head coach, knowing how that offensive coordinator position would leverage that. It seems that as you finish that playing career, your head coach at the time, who gave you that defensive graduate assistant role, may have been thinking ahead for you a little bit, and then all of a sudden your mindset kind of switches that way when you're bouncing around a receiver, learning learning the ins and outs of that position, and learning the ins and outs of O-line and tight end. You've already played quarterback. You've already GA'd at the quarterback position. Now all of a sudden you're able to put it all together, and you have 2 tremendous seasons as an offensive coordinator over there, just rewriting the record book at that school from an offensive standpoint. Obviously we could talk to X's and O's and the schemes and all that kind of stuff, but I really want to dive into just being able to compile all these experiences at all these different positions. How helpful was that in your ability to put together and string together a really strong offense?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, Mario, I have worked for great coaches, and honestly, I think that's the starting point. I've worked with guys that I think are absolute incredible teachers and organizers and play callers. And so, really, I was able to kind of pull together, all these different ideas and philosophies from the different people I'd worked for. And it's like a grab bag, right? Like you grab this and you grab that, and you grab this, and you kind of put it together and you make a system out of it, and a lot of this system evolved from, I worked for a guy named Todd Goebel, who's now at NC State, and he had brought the system to Ohio Dominican way back when I was a GA. And so a lot of it was still in place. And so my comfort level within the scheme was pretty fluid. And I was able to take what I already knew from a base perspective of the offense and then evolve it based off some of the places I've been. And it was just such a great experience. I had a chance to work for Coach Goebel and work for some of these other great minds that really, I think, made the transition an easy one. I felt very, very prepared because I really just kind of copied what everyone else did, and then as anything, you have to create a system that's true to yourself too. And so you have to kind of find your own voice as you're developing these things. But it was so nice to be able to, reflect on some of the experiences I had and pull some of the materials that people had shared with me that really allowed us to really go in. And I think we were mindful of, I got the job in July, right? So let's not reinvent the wheel, right? Let's keep it simple. Let's maybe take some stuff out. Let's bring some stuff in that's unique to us, and let's go have some success because we had good players and see where it falls. And luckily enough, we've, in those 2 seasons had a chance to have some pretty dynamic systems and offenses.
Now, Coach, you end up at Tiffin University, your first head coaching gig. First, let me ask you, are you involved in any position? Like, are you a head coach / quarterback coach or, anything like that?
Yeah, so I still am coaching quarterbacks, but I'm still plays offensively.
Okay. Now, when you slide into that head coaching role, You're putting a staff together. So over all of these years, you are collecting this data in terms of how I want to call plays offensively. I got my experience as receiver coach and on the defense side of the ball, like you said, so I can be involved in some of the decision making because I do have that experience. Now, what about personnel, like that hiring process, especially knowing that you're going to be kind of tied up a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball. You still got to be the guy for everybody on the team. How do you go make sure you got a defensive coordinator that you can trust, knowing that you will be with the QBs at times and with the offense a little bit more than them? Like, how do you manage that personnel while you're on the way to that head coaching position?
Yeah, one for me, when I had the chance to put together a staff, the first thing I cared about was relationship builders. I wanted a group of coaches that were going to invest in our guys on and off the field, that were going to care more about the development of them as men than they were as football players, and that were going to be good husbands, good fathers, good friends, and loyal to the program. And that's the impetus of where everything started, right? Was that. And so that was the number one on the checklist. And if guys didn't check that list, then it was a no-go. The second thing that I care about are, I'm always looking to have guys in our program that can elevate the level of effort of the people around them. We're an effort-based program that's relationship-driven in everything we do. And so to have coaches that elevate effort of other coaches, of their players, of anybody that's around them, to have that infectious energy, that's what we want and that's what we need. And so I'm very fortunate. I have a group of men that I have the opportunity and the fortune to work with that I think are really special people. And so they make me look good on a daily basis, and they're fun to work with. And so that in terms of like the management of time and all that stuff, I was fortunate. Tyler Johns, our offensive coordinator here, was the offensive line coach at Ohio Dominican when I was there in 17 and 18. And he and his wife, Selena, were nice enough to come with us up to Tiffin and help us build this thing. And he's been huge in terms of our offensive success. And Bert Bathiani is our defensive coordinator. And he and his wife, Haley, and their family, he was a Division III coordinator and came up with us. And I had some glowing recommendations of him and the type of person he was. And those things have paid off in a big way. And so it's been more about the people. It's been more about the relationships. And fortunately, I think that when you have guys that build men and that elevate efforts and that give great effort themselves, all the football stuff kind of works out on its own.
Coach, I sure appreciate you taking the time to sit down and share with us your journey. A lot of listeners are sitting here, taking it all in. They want to sit in your shoes one day, whether it's at Tiffin, you know how the business is, whether it's at Tiffin or somewhere else, it's a lot of guys that want to sit in that big chair and, the preparation and the thoughtful chess-like moves in terms of, how you progress in your career. I think that's super important, and I appreciate you sharing that. Now, last thing, you are part of our 35 under 35 class of this past year. Now, we didn't get to get together in Nashville this past year, but we will in San Antonio. All right, and I just want to ask, you've had, like I said, a lot of success along the way. You're sitting in a great position. What motivates you to go and seek an opportunity like this that's focused on professional development? Why did you feel that it was important to, go and apply for this role? And then number two, what was the honor in being selected for the 35 under 35?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, thank you to the AFCA, thank you to you and all the people that select the 35 under 35. I mean, it is an awesome honor. In terms of the willingness or the want to, I think coaches, the day you stop learning is the day you better get out of it, and I've always tried to develop each offseason in my career. And ultimately what I found is sometimes when you're in this position, your development is a little bit harder to achieve because there's a lot of other stuff that you're in charge of. It's a struggle sometimes to be able to sit and watch film for 2 hours without getting disrupted, right? And so I really saw the AFCA 35 for 35 also an opportunity to be a part of an elite group of men, but really more importantly was for my development, to be able to learn some of the ins and outs about being a head coach, about managing a coaching career. And I just know there's so much about the game and so much about how to become the coach that ultimately I want to be, that I need to keep seeking out people that have been there before and done it at a higher level, and just keep trying to be a better football coach and better man. And so I think the 35 under 35 gives me that opportunity, and just a really cool group to be a part of. So I can't wait to get down there and get going.
No doubt, Coach. Well, we sure appreciate it, man. I know we're rolling fast and furious into the season, so best of luck to you. Look forward to seeing you down in San Antonio in January. Last but not least, if you don't mind sharing your Twitter account so coaches can continue to follow your great journey and keep up with what you and your program are doing, that would be great.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mara, for having me. My Twitter is @Coach Reisert, and it's REISERT.
We'll make sure to link that in the show notes, Coach, so guys can easily click and follow you and ask questions and keep up with you. Thanks again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter @CoachMarioPrice, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.